Okay, we're gonna go ahead and reinstall our cut spring. First thing, make sure you're putting it back in the right direction and slide. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, Pete's Carport, and welcome to probably my most controversial video yet. And what do I mean by that? So we're going to be doing something today to the W140 that sits right behind me. That is my 1995 S500. So we're going to be cutting our springs. I already know a lot of you guys are cringing, a lot of you guys are freaking out, but I'm not recommending this. I do not recommend anybody else does this. Let's get that out there. It is something I've been wanting to try out for a long time. I've had tons of people contact me about it. I've done all of the research I could possibly do, and I've talked to many people who have already done this themselves. So we're going to approach this in the best possible way. I have been wanting to lower the front end of this car for quite some time, especially since I've already lowered the back. Now, I lowered the back by adjusting the hydraulic suspension to its lowest setting. I can link that video, but I do plan on making a current video for that because the older video I have, not the best quality. It was one of the first videos I did, and I know I can show you guys a much better way of doing it now. I may even raise that up to get a better ride quality, because the ride quality is slightly affected when you make an adjustment to the rear suspension. But let's step inside and talk about how we're going to cut this spring. Now, I'm going to link a video that discusses what springs can be cut, what springs you should never cut, and how to cut the spring. If we look closely, this is our front spring right off of the front passenger side. I'm getting ready to launch another video, which should be out first, where we're going to be changing the lower control arms. So I figured what perfect timing than to cut the spring at this point. So if you look at this, this is your upper point here, and there should be a pad on here, which is going to be on every single S500, and these pads have different heights to them too. So you could change out that pad and slightly lower the car right from the factory without cutting any of the springs. I've already taken my pad completely out. I had a shop do that when I first bought it, because I thought that it was going to be low enough for me. It just did not lower it enough. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to keep the pad out. I have had no issues with binding, no noise up front from that, so I'm not going to be worried about that. What we're going to do, though, is keep this top part on because it's nice and flat, and you don't want to affect that because we can't redo a flat spot. And we're going to cut this lower part. And you see how this spins out into space? Well, this is the type of spring you can cut because you can cut it at certain points and it's going to have this exact same shape to it. I'm going to cut exactly one spring. So what we're going to do is mark it directly right here. And I've got my cutoff wheel that we're going to be using. And we're just going to cut this piece off here. You can see we've got our clamp in here. I purchased a spring removal set, and this is a really nice one. It wasn't expensive. It is from China. They do make one from Mercedes-Benz that's extremely expensive. I want to say I spent about 60 bucks on it, but what's nice about it is it sets right inside the springs. There are some out there that clamp onto the outside, and to me, those are not nearly as safe as this style here. And that is something you're gonna have to have in order to take these springs out, and it's probably the most unsafe part of doing this. If you haven't heard the stories, these springs have been known, they're under such pressure, been known to fling out and even kill people, unfortunately. So, like I said, I highly suggest a professional doing this. Most professional shops will put in lowering springs for you if it's something that they do work on. We're going to cut them. We're going to put them back in, and we're going to see how the car looks, how the car rides, and we're going to kind of settle this controversy once and for all. Well, we're at least going to touch base on it because I'm sure there's still going to be a lot of arguments whether it should be done, shouldn't be done, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to say I am absolutely crazy. Like I said, I have that parts car over there, the S600, that has perfect springs in it. If I absolutely hate this and want to go back stock, I have that capability. But let's get started. I'm going to get set up. We're going to go ahead and cut these springs. So please make sure to go and watch that video in the description about what springs can be cut and how to cut them. I'm going to go ahead and set up, and we're going to go ahead and cut this spring, put it back in, and then we're going to move on to the other side.
Walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah.
So guys, I'm going to show you how I took the spring out. Now, I'm going to tell you over and over again, have somebody do this. This is a very dangerous job. Spring can pop out and kill you. It's a very, very strong spring. It's under a ton of load, and it's not an easy job to do. But I got the right tools for it. This is a set that I picked up. It's not an expensive set. I got it off eBay. And it's got these plates. A lot of people like to use the ones that clamp on. You want to use the plates. This set came with 2 different plates. It was specifically for Mercedes, and for a w140 specifically, when I ordered it. And what you do is we're going to slide our plates into the spring and we're going to rotate them up to the top. Let me show you. I'm going to do it real quick. You want to have this part towards the top when you're doing the top one, and the bottom one you want to have that facing down. We're going to put the little notch end facing up. We're going to slide it into the highest point we can, and then we're going to spin it up because we want to compress it as much as we can. I'm going to spin it to right about there. Grab our other plate here, and that little notch side is going to face down, and we're going to do same thing, spin it. Now last time I was pretty low and it was really hard to get it out, so I'm going to do it right about there. Take our rod here, make sure you've got that part facing down because that's where you're going to crank on it with this other tool. You're going to slide this rod all the way down, and we're going to set it into this top one first. There's a little groove that will allow it to slide in. Maybe get an angle that you can see better. There it goes. Okay, that's grooved in there now. And I'm going to go ahead and spin it back up now that I got it set. Spin this one back down. You can adjust the length on this too. Alright, that should be good. Now I'm going to grab this tool and I'm going to grab a socket wrench. Alright, so I went ahead and hand tightened it into place. That made it easy. You can do it one-man job, but it's a lot easier if you have 2 people, 1 person making sure this upper parts are staying in place because that's where it gets dangerous. And now I'm going to go ahead and crank away at it and tighten it up. And you just want to get it tight enough to where when you start lowering the control arm, you can slide it out. So we don't need it to come out in this position. And then you want to make sure everything's looking good. If you have somebody up top looking at it, I'm going to go a little bit more, and then we'll lower our control arms and pull it out. I'll show you guys how it comes out once the lower control arms are detached. I went ahead, I'm going to link the video on how to take off the lower control arm, but you're going to make sure you take off the shock, have a jack up underneath the lower control arm, and you take off the lower control arm bolt from the ball joint. And I'm going to lower this a little bit, but we're going to have to hammer the lower ball joint, and that's going to release the entire thing. Let me get under here. There it goes.
There she goes.
There she goes. Now we're going to lower this really slowly. You can come around this way. We're going to watch the spring lower down. We're going to lower it. It should come down. And there goes our spring. What you're going to do after you got it loosened up, you're going to press down with your foot. The spring should slowly come down. Get 2 hands up in there and pull your spring out. And set her off to the side. Be careful. Don't drop it, slam it around. You don't want that spring compressor coming off.
Ticking time bomb.
And that's it, man. Now we're going to go ahead and cut this one and put it back in, and we should be good to go. Well, guys, this is the moment of truth. It's sitting on level ground, and yeah, it doesn't seem to have gone down that much. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. It definitely lowered. Prior to this, I could get 3 fingers right in here and definitely struggling to get a 2-finger gap, but I expected it to be slammed right on that tire. I don't know about you guys, but it should have been a 2-inch drop, and that's according to all the sites. And let me go ahead and measure the spring to show you the piece that we cut off. So if you look here, this is the piece we cut off both sides. And if I take my measuring tape here, from the top of this perch here, which is where it would have been cut, down to the top of the next spiral is right around 2 inches. So even not considering the spring rate difference, we should have at least gotten 2 inches. I want to say it's maybe a ½ inch. As you guys may know, you OG subscribers, I am not running the spacers up front, so that should even be a bigger difference in some of the photos I saw online. And in the rear, once again, you OG subscribers will know that I adjusted the height of the hydraulics to be as low as possible. So there's an adjuster bar in there, and these are self-leveling rear shocks. And it almost looks like it self-leveled itself because it looks a little higher in the rear than it was prior to doing this. Now, this is settled for a full day because I know a lot of people are going to say it needs to settle. This is day 2. I let it sit overnight. I drove it around a little bit. So maybe it will settle a little bit more in the front, but still, I don't know about you guys, but I expected it to be slammed just cutting that spring off. I had looked on different forums. You know, I did the measurements. Of course, I don't want to overcut. And we can always cut more. So next, I may go and get H&R springs because this was just more of a fun test for me. It is very dangerous. It's going to be dangerous putting the H&R springs in as well, too, because you still got to compress those springs. So you guys be safe out there. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see more W140 content. If you're a Mercedes freak like me and Xavier, we've got lots coming. This C32 AMG is running great right now. I got all the suspension components in it. We're going to be moving on this. And of course, the wide body R129. This is going to be insane when I finish it off. There's a lot to come on this. I was waiting for the weather to get a little cooler because everything I need to do from this point on is going to require me to be outside most of the time. It has just been way too hot out here in Florida to work on this thing, but I'm excited to get back into it. Once again, you guys have an awesome day, a blessed week. I'm so glad to be able to bring you this type of content. I'll catch you on the next video.